Empowered women. My lineage is a knotted rope of fierce women. The female-bodied beings in my family have changed policies for Indigenous peoples, raised families, fought illness, and have all done this with grace. As a human, I have always believed women's rights are human rights. In fact, I teach a course, Women in Global Perspective, that emphasizes this. We end the semester with a lesson titled Staying Woke and Thankful, a Consciousness-Raising Day. This lesson comes from Estelle B. Friedman's assertion that, quote, the sharing of personal experience with others in order to understand the larger social context for the experience and to transform one's intellectual or political understandings of it, end quote. This is one of my favorite days of the semester. My students have the space to acknowledge not just what they've learned, but how they will change their lives and practices as a result of learning. Aside from teaching about feminism, I actively work toward creating gender equality in the communities in which I live, attending the Women's March on Washington, standing between law enforcement and people of color at rallies, speaking at public events about spaces in which queer people are erased, and publishing creative works that speak to abject identities are all forms of activism that feel integral to my identity and mostly feel in alignment with the moral practices to create a global awareness of inequality. Finally, I take a group of women's leadership students to India each year to learn alongside women of SEVA, the Self-Employed Women's Association. This is the largest member-based organization in the world. SEVA is responsible for educating women, for creating a bank where women have access to microloans, for assisting women in being entrepreneurs. This grassroots organization takes a bottom-up approach toward women's empowerment. If we acknowledge women's rights are human rights, then empowering women is an act of empowering all of one's community. Recently, one of my students, Alden Parker, along with 8 other females at Clemson University, created a movement on campus to address the lack of university support for survivors of interpersonal violence.
My name is Alden Parker. I am a co-writer of the petition, and I'm a student here at Clemson University, and I'm tired. For the past 2 years, students have been silenced. They received silence in return or just given empty words. Our university is labeled the nation's safest campus. However, we live in a world where
Watching
rape
her
culture
address
exists,
an issue
and Clemson is not
she is not
excluded.
only passionate about, but
Our last
inextricably
academic year
involved
crime
with,
reports
forced
listed 8
me to
sexual assaults.
reevaluate my role
Does
in
that
social
mean
justice.
that in an entire year at a university that has almost 25,000 students that there are only 8 sexual assaults? No! It is statistically impossible. According to national statistics, 1 in 4 women and 1 out of 18 men will experience sexual assault. If you do the math, that is 15% of Clemson students. That is 3,756 students. That is 3,756 members of the Clemson family. And 3,756 should be a significant enough number for our university to realize that the resources here are not adequate enough to support the number of survivors who walk this campus.
This march through campus received attention from local and state news sources. And with all this energy around change and the push to gender equality, I have to ask myself, how am I not doing enough? How Is my time away from being an activist and educator really contributing to gender inequality? How is the way I contribute and vote every day making an impact? How am I contributing with every purchase I make?